What if I told you? There was a man, one of the most brilliant minds of the 20th century, a doctor, a scientist, a man who had spent his entire career studying the human mind, who one day felt his own mind beginning to crack. Not slowly, not quietly, all at once. Like glass, visions appeared to him that he could not explain. Voices spoke to him that nobody else could hear. Figures walked through his dreams that felt more real than waking life. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. His friends stopped calling. His reputation collapsed. And for 6 years, he did not fight it. He did not run from it. He did not check himself into a hospital. He did something that terrified everyone around him. He went in, deeper and deeper and deeper, into the darkest parts of his own unconscious. Alone, with nothing but a pen and a notebook. And what he found down there changed the way the entire human race understands itself. His name was Carl Jung, and he was not a madman. He was the first person in history who was brave enough to go somewhere the human mind had never deliberately gone before, and come back alive. But here is what nobody tells you. The man who mapped the human soul almost lost his own. The man who helped millions of people understand their darkness was consumed by his own for years. The man who left behind one of the most extraordinary bodies of work in human history kept his most important book hidden, locked away, for 50 years. He did not want the world to see it, because he was afraid, not of what others would think, but of what it revealed about him. This is the real story of Carl Jung, not the psychology textbooks, not the personality tests. The actual man, the actual darkness, the actual journey into the deepest place the human mind can go. And once you hear it, you will never look at your own fears, your own dreams, your own darkness the same way again. In 1875, in a small village in Switzerland, a boy was born into a family that was deeply religious and deeply troubled at the same time. His name was Carl Gustav Jung. His father was a pastor, a man of faith who had privately lost his faith and never told anyone. His mother was loving but unstable. She would disappear into strange psychological states that frightened the young Carl deeply. From his very earliest years, Carl Jung lived in two worlds simultaneously. The outer world, church, school, family, routine. And an inner world so vivid, so populated, so overwhelming, that he sometimes could not tell which one was more real. He had visions as a child that shocked him. He dreamed dreams that felt like messages. He sensed things about people around him that he had no rational explanation for. Most children would have pushed these experiences away. Carl Jung did the opposite. He began studying them, recording them, trying to understand what they meant. From the age of 10, he was already doing what he would spend his entire life doing, going inward, asking why, refusing to accept that the surface of things was the whole story. He studied medicine, then psychiatry, and in 1900, at the age of 25, he began working at a psychiatric hospital in Zurich called the Berghalsli. What he found there changed everything. He was surrounded by patients who the medical world had essentially given up on. People experiencing hallucinations, delusions, voices, visions. People who the psychiatry of that era called simply insane and locked away. But Jung looked at these patients differently. He did not see broken machines. He saw people whose inner worlds had overwhelmed their outer ones. He began talking to them, listening to them, taking their visions and their voices seriously as meaningful experiences rather than symptoms to be suppressed. He was developing something radical for the time. The idea that the unconscious mind was not just a storage room for forgotten memories. It was a living, active, creative force, constantly communicating, constantly trying to tell you something. And that if you refused to listen, it would find ways to make itself heard that you could not ignore. In 1907, Jung met the man who would become his most important relationship and his most devastating loss. Sigmund Freud. Freud was already the most famous psychologist in the world. Jung was younger, brilliant, and hungry. Their first conversation lasted 13 hours. 13 hours without stopping. Two minds so perfectly matched in their obsession that they could not stop. Freud saw in Jung the son he never had, the heir to his life's work, the man who would carry psychoanalysis into the future. And Jung saw in Freud a father figure, the intellectual father he had always needed. For 6 years they were the closest of collaborators, writing to each other constantly, meeting whenever they could, building together what felt like the foundation of a completely new understanding of the human mind. But underneath the collaboration, a tension was building, because Jung was seeing things in his work that Freud refused to accept. Jung believed the unconscious was far bigger, far older, far more mysterious than Freud's model allowed. Freud believed almost everything in the unconscious came from personal experience, childhood, sexuality, trauma. Jung believed it went deeper, much deeper. He believed there was a layer of the unconscious that was not personal at all, that was shared by all human beings across all cultures across all of history. He called it the collective unconscious, and Freud called it mysticism, and told him to stop. In 1913, the break came. Jung and Freud ended their relationship. Publicly, painfully, the psychological world chose sides, and most of it chose Freud. Jung was dismissed, criticized, called a mystic, a traitor, a man who had abandoned science for fantasy. He lost colleagues. He lost students. He lost the professional world he had spent years building. And then, as if losing everything external was not enough, something began happening inside him. The vision started. Figures appeared in his mind that he could not explain. A voice spoke to him that called itself Philemon, an old man with wings and the horns of a bull who seemed to carry wisdom that Jung himself did not possess. He saw floods covering Europe. He saw rivers of blood. He saw the dead rising and speaking. He had no framework for what was happening to him. He was a scientist, a doctor, a rational man, and he was experiencing things that made no rational sense. And he faced the most terrifying question of his life. Was he going mad? Or was he going somewhere? He chose to go somewhere. For 6 years, from 1913 to 1919, Jung deliberately descended into his own unconscious. Every night, he would sit alone and allow the visions to come. He would enter what he called active imagination, a state between waking and dreaming where the figures of the unconscious could appear and speak. He wrote everything down. He painted it. He drew it. He filled notebook after notebook with the most extraordinary and disturbing material that any psychologist had ever recorded about their own inner world. He called this work his confrontation with the unconscious. His colleagues thought he had lost his mind. His family was frightened. There were moments when he genuinely did not know if he would come back from where he was going. He kept a loaded gun on his bedside table during this period, not to harm himself, but because knowing he had the choice to stop gave him the courage to keep going. He was the explorer of a territory more dangerous than any jungle or ocean, the territory of the human soul, and he refused to turn back. What he found in that darkness became the foundation of everything. He discovered the shadow, the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, that we project onto others, that drive our worst behavior when we are not paying attention. He discovered the anima and animus, the feminine soul inside every man, the masculine soul inside every woman, that when ignored creates an emptiness nothing external can fill. He discovered archetypes, the great universal figures that appear in the myths, dreams, and stories of every culture in human history. The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the great mother, the trickster. These were not invented by individual cultures. They emerged from something deeper, from the collective unconscious, the shared psychic inheritance of the entire human race. And he discovered the most important concept of all, the process he called individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming completely, honestly, fully yourself. Not the self that your parents wanted, not the self that society approved of, the self that was yours alone, buried underneath every mask you had ever worn, waiting. His entire life's work was a map to that self, and it remains the most profound map anyone has ever drawn. What almost nobody knows is that during those 6 years of darkness, Jung kept a special journal. He wrote in it by hand. He painted images in it of extraordinary beauty and strangeness. He poured into it everything he was experiencing in the depths of his unconscious. And when the journey was over, he locked it away. He showed it to almost nobody. He refused to publish it. For decades, his family kept it locked in a bank vault after his death. It was not until 2009, nearly 50 years after Jung died, that the world finally saw it. It was published under the title The Red Book. And when it finally appeared, the psychological and artistic world was stunned. It was not just a scientific document. It was a work of such raw, overwhelming honesty about the human inner world that people who opened it felt immediately that something inside them was being seen for the first time. It became one of the most talked about psychological works of the 20th century, 50 years after it was written, by a man who was too afraid of what it revealed to ever show it while he was alive. Carl Jung died on June 6, 1961. He was 85 years old. He died at his home on the shore of Lake Zurich, the same lake he had lived beside for most of his life. In his final days, he had a dream. He dreamed of a great tree whose roots reached down into the earth and whose branches touched the sky. He told the people around him that it felt like completion, like the dream was telling him that the work was done. He died quietly, surrounded by the people he loved, in the house he had built with his own hands. A man who had gone into the darkest place the human mind can go and come back. Not unscathed, not unchanged, but whole. After his death, his ideas spread in ways he never could have predicted. The Myers-Briggs personality test, taken by millions of people every year, is built directly on his work. The concepts of introvert and extrovert that everyone uses today, Jung gave us those words. The idea of the midlife crisis, the understanding of projection, the importance of dream analysis, the recognition that the stories and myths we are drawn to reveal something true about our inner lives. All of it, Jung, a man who lost everything, went into the darkness alone, and came back with a map that the entire human race is still using. The lesson that philosophy of successful people wants to leave with you today is this. Carl Jung did not become who he was despite his darkness. He became who he was because he was willing to face it. Most people spend their entire lives running from the parts of themselves they do not want to see. The fears, the wounds, the shadows, the voices they push down and pretend are not there. Jung looked directly at his, for 6 years, alone, without knowing if he would survive it. And what he found was not destruction. It was the most important discovery of his life, that the darkness is not the enemy. The darkness is the part of you that has been waiting the longest to be seen. So the next time something rises in you that frightens you, something you do not understand, something that does not fit the image you have built of yourself, do not run from it. Do not suppress it. Ask it what it wants. Ask it what it is trying to tell you. Because according to Carl Jung, everything you have been avoiding knowing about yourself is exactly where your real life is waiting. If this story moved something inside you, subscribe to Philosophy of Successful People. Because here, every single week, we go deep inside the lives of the greatest minds who ever lived. Not just to learn history, but to find the wisdom that changes how you think today. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join thousands of deep thinkers who refuse to stop asking why. See you in the next story.